$7. You can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a...
Should we begin? It's now 3 o'clock.
Yeah, just 2 minutes. We'll just almost like a minimum quorum. Ambikaji, we need to start thinking about it. See the extended essay of IB. Could you get access to some extended essays which were submitted by children in your area?
My son is going to write his extended essay this year in economics.
Oh my God! So just chori karenge, we will scan it. I'm just thinking that.
Okay, I'll check with him if he has any samples, because I think the school will obviously share some exemplars with them, and I'll share.
So now the higher secondary also started getting this 20-mark internal thing. Though the number of amount of mark as such is very small, but it is at least some beginning has been made in this area. This 80-20. So tomorrow,
in fact, I had submitted to CBSE many years ago a proposal on how they can write not an extended essay, but at least some kind of an analytical piece on any topic of the curriculum. So if I can dig out that paper, at least I'll send that.
We can start debating, discussing about this issue. We in the basket, a kind of virtual basket like Google Drive sort of. So that we can also ask other teachers who have been doing projects. So if they are able to scan children's projects, if they put in the basket, this basket will help to rework on it, modify it. Need not be copying it, but this is for the teacher's resource, the student's resource as such. As a teacher's resource, we can also improve upon, we can help each other to come out with a good quality project work in economics, particularly from the Indian context, because in many states it has not yet taken up, has not got. So now at least CBSE has initiated this. So we need to see creating a virtual basket where we can put these projects. See, all these 5 episodes of the webinars we have put it in the YouTube. So similarly, we should find a space where we can, or even in this DSS website, in which we have Google Drive, unlimited space. So we can also think about it.
Sure.
So we can request the teachers to put the projects that their students have done particularly for class 12.
Sure.
So we can share this to this group also.
Chalo, should we begin, Mr.
Yeah.
Srinivasan?
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Our other participants are they? Like, are you able to see this? My face here. Hello.
Yes, we can see you. We can
Okay.
hear you and see you. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Srinivasan.
So the welcome to this webinar organized by the Economics Teachers and Curriculum Developers Group. This group was like initiated at the request of the teachers about 6-7 months before, and then from then onwards we are just meeting virtually every month, once in a month, sharing our views on various interests shown by the teachers. So this group, for those who are first time, this group is interested in spreading the idea of economics education, particularly in the school system. And this group also shares ideas with regard to many pedagogical issues, curricular issues. This group comprises many people who have been working with the NCERT, CBSE, and many state boards and the international boards. This group and this webinar, like today, the attendance is relatively lesser when compared with the 5-6 months, like 6 rounds, like 5 rounds we have done so far. This is perfectly fine, as many teachers today and tomorrow are busy with their examination issues in their school, because the CBSE has already announced the dates for the examination. So in many schools also started functioning, they are attending, taking classes. So that's the one reason. The other reason is that like it's also part 2, because since we have finished, we have already done one round of part 1, where Mr. Rana has wonderfully presented some of the important issues with regard to how to develop multiple choice questions, how to develop behavior like assertion reasoning questions, what are the precautions one need to take. I also like when Ambika Gulati said that whether she can make a presentation, I found very happy myself, because economics education is done almost like in 25,000 schools in India. So almost about 30 to 40,000 economics teachers are teaching economics, at least at the CBSE level and at the national level boards, and hundreds and thousands of schools are also teaching economics in the state boards. So you may be having a variety of issues, variety of interesting ideas, innovative ideas on developing good quality questions, good quality question papers, also whenever the CBSE changes the examination system, and we also have to require, like we have to innovate ourselves, we have to implement the ideas of the CBSE board when we develop questions and question papers, and we have to make question papers in such a manner that children are not confused. So in order to get better insights into the question paper making, question making, understanding about assessment, both theoretically and practically. So I just thought many sessions of this kind, part 1, part 2, part 3, if any other teacher is coming out with the another innovative idea or different ways of looking at the questions and question papers, assessment in economics, you are welcome. So that is why we thought like we need to have a series of sessions on the assessment. I also noticed that many teachers, after introducing the multiple choice questions, many teachers are still filling with the idea of only 3 options. 3 options is given only for class 3, class 4 children, not for the class 11, 12 children. So we need to have, we need to demystify ourselves how to develop a good quality multiple choice questions, train ourselves so that the students will get good quality multiple choice questions. And also generally the idea of memory recall questions can be avoided, and more application based questions can be posed in the multiple choice questions area, or in other very short answer or essay type questions also. So that is why we thought of having many more presentations in the area of assessment. We will also look into the pedagogy and how to teach innovatively, and that will be more like that's also one of the major agenda of this group. So we'll have many more sessions on that. Then we'll also have, for example, sessions on how to implement the idea of National Education Policy 2020, how to understand it and implement in the area of curriculum, understand in the area of syllabus, implement in the area of textbooks, implement in the area of assessment. So all those are agendas of this group, and we hope that we will learn among ourselves, share our ideas, so that we'll be able to work with the students, help them to understand economics in much better ways. So let me invite Ambika Gulati to make her presentation, and before her presentation, thank you very much. Besides all these responsibilities, right now she's taking treatment. She's undergoing treatment on COVID-19. And so the last stage, don't worry. So we are all in virtual mode. So please pray for her safe and quick recovery, and join back to school, because otherwise sitting in the house, not going to school is also a kind of another sickness for all the teachers. All of us, it happens. So hope that like within a few days time she'll start going back to school. So with this, let me take this opportunity to invite Ambika Gulati to make her presentation. And then this will be followed by questions and additional ideas in the area of assessment. Ambika Gulati ji.
Thank you, Professor Srinivasan. Thank you so much for giving me another opportunity to present my thoughts and views. And it's lovely to see friends. I've seen Dr. Jaya Singh after many years. So it's lovely. Thank you, Jaya, for attending the session. And what I want to say is that I am no expert. So we are all colleagues, and the idea is only to share a few thoughts on assessments, the way we do it, or the way I have done it as a practicing teacher, the thinking behind it, the rationale behind it, and just to engage with you. And I would also maybe share what is it that we are looking to do at my school now. Given the NEP has come in from the current year, we are revamping assessment to really focus on the 21st century skills, on subject-specific skills, beyond just and personal development of children, rather than just focusing on content assessment. And currently the school, actually, when they are developing their curriculum, they are mapping it to these skills and designing tasks so that these skills can be assessed through the term. So that's an initiative that the school teachers have taken, and the school leaders are working very closely with the school teachers and the heads of department to ensure that they go forward. So my first question is on the Padlet, and it's really what is the purpose of assessment. So if you click on this Padlet link, and it's a question that we all answer, we all know the answers to, just so that we are all on the same page. If I can request you to click the Padlet link and get into it, I will be able to see, and we will all be able to see the screen. Are you able to see my screen of blue stars and the sky?
Yes, we are seeing it.
Lovely. So just click on the link, add, and click on the pink plus sign, and add your comments on what is the purpose of assessments. So I'll give you 2 minutes to answer that. Excellent. We are already seeing some answers come up, and we've got achievement of learning.
Ambika, I'm not able to write on it.
Have you clicked the link?
Yeah.
How?
Okay,
You can see
fine.
the red.
Can you see this positive, this plus sign here? If you click, then can
Yeah.
you write?
Okay, fine. Go ahead. It's not.
Do we have any more people looking to
Mhm.
share their views? Thank you. So we've got someone saying that to evaluate my students' learning and thus plan my next step forward in teaching. That's very nicely put. Thank you. Shabana says in the chat to know about the concept clarity about a particular topic. Fair enough. Thank you, Shabana, for sharing your views. I'll wait one more minute just to check if anyone else is. So if the links don't work, I would request you to keep the chat line on because I can see that. Okay, so let's move ahead. Let's not waste time. So we've got three very interesting answers to evaluate my students' learning, thus plan my next steps for teaching, achievement of learning objectives, and to know about the concept clarity about a particular topic. Okay, so I'm going back into the slides and have a look at what I put together as the purpose of assessments. The first, which I've written, is about reflection. It provides a reflection to the teacher on what the students have learned. And that comes with the curriculum outcomes, where you have already got some learning outcomes that need to be attained and achieved by students, and it allows you to see whether they are meeting those or not. The second is about identifying areas where students are still facing difficulty. Obviously, if 80% of my class has got a particular question wrong, then I know as a faculty member that I need to go back to ensure that I kind of revise that or strengthen that concept for the children. Very important that assessments are also used to measure and monitor student progress from their starting point. What is it that they came in with? What kind of knowledge did they come with? And how they have progressed through your teaching and learning, and where have they reached? Are we being able to meet the individual needs of students? So assessment gives us that reflective piece, and a tool for your teachers, like somebody rightly wrote on the Padlet, that it helps me to check whether I have been able to actually deliver on the content that is required, or have I been able to meet the objectives required of the curriculum, which therefore means it's a feed forward to teachers. How do I take my teaching practice forward? And when I'm talking about teaching practice here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very clear that it is not just the content of economics. We did this when we were doing my first webinar on 21st century skills. As an economics teacher also, I have the responsibility of not just giving them knowledge about the economic concepts, but also building their 21st century skills, building them as human beings, as personal, that personal development. And this is what I started by saying. So and therefore for me, I find as a teacher, I fall back a lot on the formative assessments, because they are the ones that actually allow me to see whether my children are progressing. Are they learning? Are they understanding? Are they developing as good human beings with the right 21st century skills? And now with the NEP talking about competency-based assessment and moving away from rote, I think we really do need to reflect on what kind of assessment do we want to engage with in the future, because this is a golden opportunity to really bring in a sea change for the way we assess our children? And how do we encourage those higher levels of thinking? And how do we encourage the problem solving and the critical thinking? And how do we get them to still get the concepts of the economics that we love and we want to teach? So assessments, we all know, are of three kinds, two kinds, formative and summative. And in the formative assessment, it's really assessment for learning and assessment as learning. And summative assessment is really assessment of learning. So in a summative, and I'm going to quote Dylan Wiliam in a little while. Professor Dylan Wiliam is a very renowned researcher of assessments, and especially a believer of formative assessment. And he visited our school, and he spoke about how, any assessment actually can become a formative assessment. The fact that if you give children the opportunity to learn from their mistakes makes it formative. And you don't have to. So it's only, even a year-end exam, if you allow them to look at a marking scheme, if you allow them to, reflect on where they've gone wrong with respect to that marking scheme, you've turned an assessment of learning into an assessment for learning. So there is no hard and fast rule that a term exam or a midterm exam or a class test is a summative assessment, and only tasks and activities done in the classroom are formative, or questions asked are formative. That is a myth that we need to get away from. The idea of the assessment for learning is that we should be able to give the children the diagnostic feedback and the feedback to improve their thinking and their learning. So whichever way we design it, either pen and paper or tasks or activities or questionnaires, just verbal questions, everything can become an assessment for learning. So this is what Professor Williams talks about, that if we look at the teacher, the peer, and the learner, there are three people that actually can help learning in the classroom. And you can then say that where is the learner going? Where is the learner currently in their learning space? And how do we get where they need to be? So this rubric actually allows you to see what is it that each one can do in that journey for the learning to happen in the classroom. So whether it is clarifying and understanding. I think one of the things that we've done at school is we've introduced the concept of learning intentions and success criteria across the school for every unit of study. And that tells you that they have the children at the beginning know what they are learning, why they are learning, and how will they be able to demonstrate to their teacher that they have actually learned. So it's very important to set the stage right at the beginning. And then feedback. I think that's a very critical piece, because I'm going to show you John Hattie's research, which he has done on what actually improves student learning and outcomes. And his work actually shows the biggest impact. There are two things. One is that the children have to have belief in their own learning. And the second is the kind of feedback that teachers give, the relationship they have with the children, and the feedback they are able to give so that they are able to improve the learning. And we don't really, yes, we have these external tests, etc. But really the teacher should be able to accurately allow the children to work. Again, if I can request you to go into Menti, and I'm going to just put this link on the screen. You could just give me 1 minute. You click on Menti, and if you just go type to menti.com on your devices and go into this code 4142220, then we will have a quiz, and you will be able to tell me any formative assessments that you use in class, up to at 3. We'll get a word cloud. We'll be able to see what all our colleague friends are doing in class. What kind of formative assessments do you do? So I'll give you 2 minutes to think about that, and I'll put the code in the interim in the chat. So Ruchi, can you just tell me whether it is working or not?
Ma'am, it's working. It's working.
Super.
Both the things.
Yeah, I just want you to do the formative assessment first.
Okay, ma'am.
If you're unable to reach out to menti.com, then you could just put your answers in the chat. It just, we are a small group. It just makes it easier. Super. So I've got some games, I've got written work and group work as formative assessment used by somebody in class. Thank you for sharing. Quiz. Okay, thank you. I think Srinivasan has mentioned quiz. Excellent. So we've got MCQs, one sentence, justification based, and games. We've got some other play cards, extempo about a particular topic. Very good. Thank you, Shabana, for sharing that on the chat. So correct. So we've all got some formative assessments that we use, and like I mentioned at the beginning, if the assessment is diagnostic, if we give feedback to children, it becomes an assessment for learning. It allows them to improve their learning journey. So let's go back to the presentation and see what are the advantages of formative assessment. When we design, thank you, Pooja, I love that, conceptual Antakshari. We'll start right at the bottom, that they are non-threatening. Now, can you see all the examples that everyone has shared, whether it's playing cards or it's Antakshari or talking extempo or games or anything? See, you brought in a fun element in helping children to understand the concepts. And through that fun and that task that you are designing, you are assessing whether they have learned or not. So it becomes non-threatening and it consolidates the learning. It allows children to also self-assess themselves because, it becomes the classroom environment then becomes more conducive to learning. And they are willing to accept their errors and move ahead and learn from that. It also allows you to bridge the gap between lesson planning and the implementation. So I plan to teach this, or I plan that my children should learn this by the end of the lesson. But when I asked this question, or when I just designed a task and I gave it to them, I found 60% could not do it. So, oops, there is something that has been gone wrong in my teaching learning for that day. And hence it allows me immediately, it gives me feedback how I need to move the class forward and helps takes children, and I also find that at the +2 level, when you ask them to design their own AFLs, they take ownership for their learning. And sometimes their questions, which the students design, are far more difficult than what you and I can ever think of. And I remember that when teaching elasticity of demand, when I asked them to prepare a quiz for each other, it was the kind of questions they came up with. I kept them for years because I would give them as questions in the exam paper. That batch really did some excellent work. And it improves student engagement, because now it's not just a pen and paper test that they are constantly working with. They are these tasks and activities you're designing, and it increases student engagement in the classroom. So it becomes of self-fulfilling efficacy of improving the engagement rate, and therefore the learning and the outcomes and the expectations that have been shared with, to achieve the learning outcomes set by the curriculum developers, that also gets achieved in the process. Very quickly, I know I have shared many examples in my previous webinar on embedding 21st century skills in the economics classroom. I'm going to give you some similar examples from there here, because these can become examples of formative assessments that we look at our school, or I have looked at as a teacher. Learning menu. Choice is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen, and especially at the +2 level. Children want to be able to make choices. Now, choice doesn't mean that, they can study, one is studying producers equilibrium and somebody else is doing Keynesian economics. No, but within that, how do they demonstrate that they have learned? They don't all have to write the same answer to the question. You can set the parameters. So here I've said, give them a check, ask the children to choose between a chat show or a newspaper article or a song or a mind map, and you can ask them, how do you want to show me that you have learned the concept? And they will come up with their own ideas. And then you can tell them that in this particular topic, whatever you do, you have to give me these 4 or 5 things. So you've set the parameter, you've set the boundaries for them, and then they are able to choose the way they want to. I would never take up a song because I'm not musically inclined, but I remember many years ago in my previous school in Delhi, the children came up with such an amazing jingle on the relationship between average cost and marginal cost. It was spectacular, and they learned it for life because it was something that they enjoyed creating. So allow children choice is the key takeaway, from here. Design the tasks in a manner that they can actually demonstrate their learning to you. Ask them to be a quiz master. It's a great way. And you're not in this particular, the only twist in this exercise is that you are not judging the person who is answering the question, but you are judging the level of the question that has been created by the student and what is it that they are expecting as the answer. So it's the team that actually creates the question and determines the accuracy of the answer. That as a teacher will help me know whether that particular group has understood that concept or not. It's not about the person who's answering. It's about the creation of the question. So as a quiz master, do I know the content? Do I know it? And it brings in such high levels of student engagement in the classroom. So try it if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. I can see, conceptual Antakshini, etc. There's another strategy that I used, sorry, I'll go back, is who am I? So you could use this for a particular topic where it's just, if instead of just asking them what is the definition of A, B, C, D, E, like fixed cost and average cost and marginal cost, I just looked at this and I gave them sheets of paper and I said, okay, this is what it is. So why don't you write who am I? Now, again, there was so much excitement and buzz in the classroom. And by doing an activity like this, you actually understand whether children have been able to apply that particular concept to a real life scenario, because you are telling them, I am the cost that does not change even when Nestle India wants to make a larger amount of Kit Kat chocolates. So you have brought in the real world into the classroom And yet we are continuing to teach them the concepts of micro that we need to. And we are able to assess whether children have understood this or not. I'll move to another one, and of course, everybody uses a mind map. It's a great way of assessing whether children have actually understood. What are those key takeaways? And you could break that mind map on an everyday basis, that after every class, you ask them for an exit ticket, which you tell them that, okay, think about a question that you still have in the class, from the class. What is it that you really understood? What is it that you have learned? What is it that you still want to know? So the KUW charts can be done. Or once the whole, the entire unit is over, then you can actually ask them to create that mind map. And through the mind map, you will be able to see whether they have actually picked up on the key concepts and the key topics. They could do it as a group, they could do it individually, but typically exit tickets on a daily basis are done individually. Now they give you great feedback to say, okay, I've not understood this, and your next day's lesson can start with that. Or if they've said that they have understood it, then you can just pose a question the next day to check, have they really understood it? Or sometimes children feel they've understood it, but they may not have. So it's a great way of assessing that piece also. I go forward. Of course, I've shared this earlier. Making thinking visible. Again, another way of, and we do this a lot at school. How do we, it's a think, pair, share strategy from the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Project Zero, making thinking visible. That's the project and they've got lovely routines, which we always look at these for primary school, but I've always used these at the 11th and 12th level, and it helps me to assess their thinking. So they think as an individual, is the farmers' protest reasonable? I mean, I've just taken a contemporary topic, just to make them understand that there are multiple perspectives. There are different stakeholders in a given scenario. Are you thinking of the various aspects? It's just not farmers, it's the government, it's the consumer, it's the retailer, it's the wholesaler. I mean, there are so many people involved in that protest. So what is it? How does it look like from everybody's perspective? Then they can discuss it in pairs. Then they can share it with the classroom. And through that discussion, again, the teacher can make anecdotal records and knows whether the children have understood or not, or who is that child who actually needs this help and support in a particular topic. I want you to actually do this for me, please. If this were the case study given, and I know that CBSE has introduced case studies for this academic session and for this examination, what questions would you ask the children that are relevant to our course content? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that, because 2 minutes to read and 3 minutes to write, and just frame your questions on the chat box, please.
Yeah, Ambika, for those who are watching the mobile phone, it may be difficult for them to read this text.
Okay, so if they can just speak, if they can just give me a question, if anyone wants to just unmute, and because we are such a small group of people, it will be lovely to just, if someone can
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
unmute.
Yeah, so this question could be like, how would the government manage? How does the government manage to achieve self-sufficiency uh, in pulses?
Okay,
Your
so
question.
the answers are there in terms of the acreage increasing. Fair enough. Good question. What I've got Shilpi saying, what is the role of MSP? All right. Anything else that comes to anybody's mind? Thank you, Amit, for sharing that question. How is MSP helpful for farmers? Fair enough.
Ma'am, we can also have a question, a little evaluating, where I say that if MSP is above the equilibrium price, how will it be? How will it affect the market? And if it is below the equilibrium price, then how it will affect the market? So,
All
we
right.
will be looking at the excess demand and excess supply side, and the kids can have a six marker based on this.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. So very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else?
Yeah. Uh, uh,
Yes,
I'm,
Srinivasan, your question.
I'm really tempted to say that. See, the let us. I think when we are talking about case studies, let us confine to the idea. See, this is the question where the perfect competition or even the market forms cannot be easily applied. The MSB, whether the MSCP is a equilibrium price or above equilibrium or below equilibrium, it's very tough question for the child to grasp and respond actually. But anyway, like you people have to
Sorry,
reflect on.
I think no, that because we do teach them about the ceiling price and the floor
Ma'am,
price.
but
So
then that would be from class 11 syllabus or maybe a
sure,
competition. Yeah.
we are talking about 11th and 12th, Amit, here. So it's
Yeah.
not just
Anyway,
12th. We are not.
But case study
Yeah,
in both class, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. That is
yeah.
in 11th as
Good
well as in
afternoon,
12th.
Mr. Anand.
Yes.
Yes, and a question that I thought of reading, I'll tell you, it's a very whacked out question. You can all disagree with me. We are working towards achieving self sufficiency in pulses, which means right now we are not. That means somewhere we are importing. So, my question was going to be, if India achieves self sufficiency, how is it going to impact the balance of payments? So, if we as faculty just read between the lines, I'm sure we will be able to come up with something that triggers that thinking. And the case study, has come from the Harvard Business School. They are the ones who actually propagated the idea of learning through case studies. Because there is sometimes no right or wrong answer, and it's not black and white. And something that Jaya mentioned right at the beginning, before I think the participants joined, that do we always need to have a right answer for things? And no, there can be multiple answers, and that's the whole idea. Going forward, assessment should allow children to think and to move, to be able to rationalize and justify what they are saying. I think a lot of other curricula are allowing students to do that. So that was the reason why I brought this question, and I wanted to have a little bit of discussion on it. So go back to my mentee, and I'm going to put on the next slide. As do you think that formative assessment needs to be included in our report cards? And I have some people already who have shared their ideas.
the sample size is very small to make such a big decision.
I, just to get a flavor. Sample size, I agree, is very small, but just to understand what the group thinks of.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 people who have used the same Menti link. I'll try and put it again, copy it. Ah. Okay, so we've got lots of people out of 5 people who have responded. We've got 4 people saying yes, formative assessments should be included in a student's report card. It's debatable. I don't have a right answer to that because I feel formative assessment is something which will help improve learning, and it really may or may not, should not be really included. But having said that, if we give a class test or if we give a term end test, then we provide them the steps for the next steps for improvement, then that also becomes formative, but we have to include that in the report cards. So it's a question that I'm going to leave you to think about because I don't have an answer to that question. Okay, let's go back. Let's just now shift from the formative assessment. Now we're coming to more in terms of exams and what do we ask them. And obviously we are using the revised Bloom's taxonomy now. So it starts from remembering, then understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And we typically don't reach the creating level in our CBSE, but we'll keep that at bay right now. And I'm going to actually show you what we do at school. So what we tend to do at school, and I don't know why this is, sorry. There are these questions here. I've taken national income accounting as a sample. And what we tend to do is that we look at the Bloom's taxonomy and the faculty across all subjects, not just economics, looks at what is it that can be asked at the various levels to help demonstrate that the children have learned. So some of the examples I've looked at is at a remembering level, it would be what is meant by operating surplus. When you take it further, it would explain the problem of double counting in national income accounting. And an application question for that unit would be obviously a numerical. I mean, there's no rocket science in that. When we analyze, the question we put forward is examine if expenditure made by corporates under corporate social responsibility schemes are included in national estimates, because they are thinking of it, they are analyzing it with respect to the theoretical constructs that they have learned, and then they need to come up with an answer. Then evaluate anything that you defend and refute, and you have to provide a rationale for it. It becomes an evaluating question, and hence we've talked about GMT being a good measure of welfare. Whether you defend it or you refute it, the choice is yours, and it allows children to think. And this is where the multiple answers will come in, because as long as your justification is accurate and you're able to justify, it should be fine. And in the creating piece, we take the children, something which is beyond the board, we don't teach to the board examination, but really for them to love the subject. Write a speech as the Chief Statistical Officer of India and stating which method of calculating national income you would use and why. So it's very interesting to see some of the questions and the reasoning that the children come up with, and they need to research. So you're also building 21st century skills of research in it. You're building communication skills for them. You are building their thinking skills to logically present their ideas. So look at the one task that you give, you're able to do so many more holistic development of children because of that task. So what I'm going to do next is to request, okay, I'm going to first come back. There are some other critical thinking questions which I have shared on the screen here with you. Just to give you a flavor that those are extremely important as we teach. They cannot just come at the end of a unit or in an examination, because children need to understand how to answer and how the thinking has to be stretched. The brain is a malleable piece, so only when they will exercise it during the course of the year will they be able to understand at the end. So certain examples I've put over here for you just to understand certain critical thinking questions. Now, this was, of course, LPG, which was many, many years ago. The government asked, for many of us to give it up, the subsidy. So what is the impact of that? What is the impact of, the of demand from Air India's economy travel as well as in terms of its business class. So again, think of questions. We all read the newspaper. You will come up with many situations that are currently there in India, which we will be able to relate to our course content. Get the children to think. Don't also get bogged down by that. I've only taught them price elasticity of demand, and therefore I should just restrict it to that. If you want, then ask them to research. Children want to go beyond the curriculum sometimes. So talk about it. And, for example, I think one of the nicest classes I had year on year was a class on how do companies take an investment decision, and how does a company actually start and take that decision whether they want to come into production or not, and whether they should invest in this machine or not. So we would talk about rate of returns, etc. But that's not in the course. But the children thoroughly enjoyed looking and listening to that. So think beyond. Don't get boxed in just because it's not in our course. We cannot do that. I love the idea what Gurjeet has said, that I'm prepared. My students are preparing a debate on the Kisan bill. Very, very good. Excellent. We talked about it, and do a thinking routine with it. A visual thinking routine of think, parent, share. You will get lots more ideas. What I would like you to do is to reach out again to this Padlet link, and I'm going to try and put it in the chat. And I want you to take Keynesian economics as a concept. And I want you to see if you can actually put the Bloom's taxonomy, the way I shared with you national income accounting, if you can put the Bloom's taxonomy in it. And I'll just put the Padlet link here now for you. So you can just click this plus button, and from Keynesian economics, a remembering question, an understanding question, an applying question, an analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Let's see what we come up with. So 5 minutes for you to do this. So we've got people already writing their first question on remembering. So I'm going to keep quiet for 2 minutes. If you can't see the link, please just write it on the chat. A remembering question, an understanding question, an applying question, an evaluating question, an analyzing question, and a creating question from Keynesian economics, please. That's the topic. Very good. So now no more remembering questions, please. Let's move on. I've got one understanding question. Let's take the higher levels. Explain the components of aggregate demand. Brilliant. That's an understanding question. Okay, so I'm going to can I request to move or evaluating? Very good. Budgetary announcements of 2021. That's a lovely question for evaluate. But the word understand is not something that I would put there. But it's we are looking really at Keynesian economics. COVID impact on aggregate demand, Pooja. That's an evaluating question. Fair enough. Because that's something also, it could be a application question. So credit multiplier is not part of Keynesian, it's part of money and banking. I have reservations about and you know, we are very happy those who've written it. Please do correct me if my thinking is wrong. When we talk about derivation of saving function from a consumption function or vice versa, that's really not applying. That is the theory. The application of that comes in when children actually solve numericals. So that's the way I would look at it. When you apply the concept to a new situation, and here the new situation is the numerical that you have. So I would not put the derivation. Derivation is understanding. Do I understand? Do I understand how the derivation is done? So I would shift that into the understanding wing. Explain the steps taken by government to come out of slowdown during lockdown are definitely not an applying question. It is an eval. If you are asking them to just, you know, critically examine, if you use the word critically examine, it just takes it at the evaluation level. So I would put that question straight up at the Bloom's taxonomy at evaluation, where you're saying critically examine the steps taken by the government to come out of slowdown during lockdown. I think it's a brilliant question that you have framed, just needs a little bit of a tweak. Then again, government increased fiscal deficit, what would be the objective behind it, and explain in the context of 2021 economic growth. Yeah, again, I would just change and tweak it a little bit to use the word analyze the impact of the increased fiscal deficit on the economic growth of India. So you are allowing children to take that critical analysis that, you know, when you say explain, it pretty much becomes there's a right and a wrong answer. But when you are analyzing, there are certain things that you will say in the positive, there are certain things which you will say may not work, and hence your overall conclusion as a student, what is going to happen there. So again, let's look at the evaluation we've looked at. Anything on the creating part, very tough in our subject to actually get onto the creation piece. So that's a very, very good attempt. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. As a central bank governor, I'm assuming central bank governor, present your monetary policy to the government. Brilliant. So you write your speech, or you can draw your monetary policy out, or you can make a rap song on your monetary policy, but that's what you need to present. So excellent for anyone who has shared that on that. So moving ahead, let's move ahead. I'll quickly move into the last phase, which is MCQs. I know that's another addition that the CBSE has done. And last week, Mr. Rana presented very nicely on the MCQs. I thought I'll just reiterate a lot of the things that he has spoken of and share with you what learnings I have had. And these learnings have really stemmed from my engagement with CBSE when it used to have the social studies proficiency test. I used to frame them, the MCQs at that time. I really learned how to write MCQs at that time. Then again, when the first CTET exam came, and we did some MCQs there. And that has helped me actually to frame a lot of good MCQs for the students. It's not easy. You have to understand that framing, we all think, and this is something that Professor Srinivasan spoke about, that we need to not have just at the remembering level. If you want the MCQ to be at a higher level of thinking, whether they're challenged to think, then it's not easy to write those MCQs. And we all, it takes time. It's time consuming. It needs a lot of thought, and especially if we want to move it to competency based assessment. In the chat box, any rules and strategies that you adopt when framing MCQs? Can I request you to use the chat box? And Mr. Rana gave us some excellent tips last week on how we can frame the MCQ. So let's see if you remember them from last week.
It's very tough for us to recall what we have learned last week.
Okay, so don't recall from last week. You write what anything that you keep in mind when drafting an MCQ. We're all teachers and we all have to frame MCQs because we're all making pre-bought papers now for our children. Shilpi, I love the question you have written, that if you're a member of the opposition, what changes would you like to make to the farmers' bill? Very, very nice. Again, I would, yes, somewhere creating, but a lot of evaluation there. Very, very brilliant question. Thank you for sharing that.
For multiple choice questions, one option should not be longer than the other options given. It should have.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Poonam. Yes. So one of the things, one is I made 4 options. Very good. Poonam has shared, and I'm going to put Poonam's option here. That one option, all options should be of the same length. Have I got you right?
Yes.
Okay. Short distractors and keys. All right. Half a minute more, and then I will take the presentation because I really want to hear everybody's views then. Okay, let's look at what I've got here. I'm going to just put them. The first thing is that you need to write a stem for the question. And some of the rules that we follow when we write stems is that you have to phrase it very, very carefully and include the main idea in the question. It can't be that the main idea comes in the answers. So the main idea must come in the stem of the question that we write. Options should be less confusing. I'm not so sure if we are looking at 11th and 12th. We do want it to be close distractors, Shilpi. We're going to come to that. Avoid extra language in the stem. So don't put unnecessary things. Make it precise, make it concise so that children know exactly what we're asking them. And avoid giving them clues. Now, what do I mean by that? Supposing we talk about what is meant, we give them an example of, let's say, excise duty is an example of, and we write an. And the options are indirect tax, direct tax, property tax, some other tax. Now, the fact that we have said "and" has become a clue for the child to say it has to be one of the vowels that have to be clicked. So avoid looking at giving them those kind of options. So I would say if we say excise duty is an example of a stroke and. Now, you have not given any clue. It could be a direct tax, it could be indirect tax, it could be anything else, that options that you have given them. So be careful about giving them options in the answer in the stem. Include any language in the stem that you want to repeat. So many times, we say the price of the product will increase, the price of the product will fall, the price of the product will remain constant. So if you're giving these options, then the price of the product can actually go up into the question. It's not required in the answer. So it just says the price of the product will, and then colon, and what will happen, so that it becomes easy for the students to actually read. Make words not, except, etc. in bold. See, the tendency is for children and even for us as adults, I have to take a principal's license exam next month, where there are MCQs in it, where they have clearly said, the when we are talking about the negative, that must be put in bold. Ideally not given, but if you have to give, then not in bold. Sorry, it should be in bold, and it should be underlined. It should be clearly visible to the examinee or the person taking the test, that there is some exception that we are looking for in that question. When we have to write the distractors, so now we've written the stem on top, brilliantly written. Now what are the questions, the options as we call it, so here I've written very clearly, please move away from remembering questions. It's very easy. Write the answer first. That is the most important step. You don't write the distractors first. Please write the answer. Then only you will be able to write very close distractors. And do not lift content from the text or the lectures or the alternative provided, the examples that have been provided in those. Because the idea, if you want them to stretch their thinking, you have to frame the question. You have to frame the question. Think of scenarios, think of what, again, what is happening currently in India, and you can relate to those and put them. So then it becomes competency based, because you are looking at not just content, but you're looking for them to think of how that concept is working in that particular MCQ. Distractors must be incorrect, but they must seem plausible. Shilpi, this is the answer to your question that I said, should be less confusing. You have to make the distractors, and that's the art of making good MCQs, where the child will say, it can be this. So there's no point in writing where the child can easily say, this is not a right answer, this is not a right answer, through elimination, and therefore this has to be the right answer. You have to give them the distractors which will make them think, can this be an option? And it has to be incorrect, but it must sound plausible. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we all face when we write MCQs, because the distractors takes it. And that's why people, the SAT exam or the ACP, etc., these international benchmarking exams, they have a team of people who are actually creating these MCQs at that high level. You can have more than one right answer. And I'm going to show you some examples, and then you can give them options to say, is A 1 and 2 correct, or 2 and 3 correct, or 3 and 4 correct, because that will help you to actually see whether they know the concept. And you can have answers that include a justification. So you've written something, and this is where the assertion and the reasoning question come in. Do they understand? Are they able to evaluate and justify and move forward? Some more rules that we follow. Don't have humorous
Hello,
answers.
Ambika, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can I just say one thing? Just one thing, when we are framing MCQs, I think the option sometimes people give none of the above. It should not be there. This is
absolutely
what I feel.
not. Yes, absolutely correct. I think it's written somewhere, it's going to be coming. And again, no humorous answers, again, which is easily where they can delete it. It has to be very meaningfully done. Here's what you're saying, Poonam. All of the above, none of the above should be avoided as much as possible, because those intuitively they will mark that, and invariably that will be the right answer. That's why you've given it. Also, answer should not have words like never and always, very strong words. So again, children can pick those and eliminate very easily. Keep the length, which is what I think Pooja said, or somebody said, that, keep the length of the answers the same. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. That's one of the strategies. and write grammatically correct English, because if we don't write accurate English, the meaning of that sentence can absolutely change for the child, and it becomes very, very confusing. So hence my request when you frame MCQs is do not write the test in one day. It's very difficult to come up with good questions, and review and revise 100%. About 2 or 3 times you should go through it, and do it after 2 to 3 days, because by then you've forgotten what you've written, and when you come back to read it, you will realize, oh, maybe it's not making sense, and it's not making sense the way I really wanted it to make sense. And have a colleague, always have a colleague test it before you deliver, because the colleague will look at it and say, this word is not making sense, and this is where I went, this is how I'm interpreting it. So we have to be very clear about what other things we want to consider. MCQs, for me personally, one of the most challenging questions that we can create, but the most satisfying if they come out correctly, because they really do not allow children to run around and write whatever they want. They have to think and be precise in their thinking. So some examples, just to give you an overview, and I'm not going to spend too much time. There is a remembering question you can have. There is an understanding question you can have. Yes, Usha ji, absolutely. None of the above. We've already talked about that. The application of a concept of, how there are some problems with the barter system. I've drafted something which is like a chat between two people, and then they can talk about who is and what is the problem from that, Rashi and Natasha are facing. So you applied it to a new concept. And if you take it at another level, this is really an analyzing question from Keynesian economics in terms of diagrams. So it helps you. They need to know, they need to understand, they need to be able to evaluate, analyze to see whether they really understand which is the level of income in the economy where inventory is rising. Here's an example. We've talked about assertions and reasoning, and I think Mr. Rana did a brilliant job of it last week or the week before. Again, that becomes an evaluating kind of a question, and at a very high level of Bloom's, because children need to be able to understand not just the assertion, but the reason, to be able to think and evaluate which one of them is right, why is it right, and then mark the answer. Actually, I wanted to share, I don't know if you're game to do that, but how many of you know how Socrative works? For me personally, I find this a brilliant tool, a formative tool. It can become a summative tool. It just brings in so much excitement into the classroom, and it gives teachers such a good account of where children are question-wise, student-wise. All the data comes in like half a minute once the test is over, and it allows teachers to use that information to inform their teaching and learning, because if they can see if one child has done particularly badly, then they know they need to focus on that child. If they feel that a certain percentage of a large percentage of children have not attempted a particular question, then they know that they need to focus on that concept. So if you have not engaged with Socrative or Quizzes, either or, please do. They are extremely user-friendly tools and very, very good for regular teaching and learning, and to build that assessment into the classroom. It's great. I mean, those of us who use it, it's very good. The last, which I said, is that I want to show you John Hattie's work, and this is what he comes with, the effect size. Can you see that the effect size of teacher feedback for children is to improve learning is 1.13. And that's extremely, extremely important. So teachers make a significant role, and we know it. And therefore, the assessment that we create and the feedback that we give with that assessment it's not just about taking an assessment, it's the looping in the diagnostic comments. If they've written an essay, what are the diagnostic comments on what they can do? What are their next steps for learning? How do we take their learning forward? That is critical. And of course, students believing in their cognitive ability. So two very important factors that actually determine student learning. Things like class size and all, he looks at it, it's not very good. And can you see the red? The red is the number of parameters where teachers can make an impact directly on student learning. The school, which is school leaders and the general school environment, are very few, and home is even less. So really it is you and me in the classroom. We are the change makers. We are the ones who can make that impact on student learning. We are the ones who can instill that love for economics and take it forward so that they take it forward in school, in college and beyond. So with that, I think I've come to the end of the presentation, and I'm going to quickly put up a link which you can, while the discussion is going on, if you can just provide me the feedback that is required for the presentation.
One small intervention, Ambika, just many of my colleagues this time, they have joined very late. They must be with the school coming back home. Can you just summarize, just to flip through the slides that you made from the beginning to the end? I'm sorry, I know that it's difficult, and so that they will get an idea, particularly because a good number of them have joined after 3:30, 3:45. So just to flip through, summarizing the main thing.
Okay, so I'll quickly go through. The presentation really was divided into 3 parts. One was to also help us understand, the idea being that assessment has to be linked very closely with the teaching learning in the classroom. I think that's a key takeaway I would request you to have. Assessment is not something far out. Assessment has to be linked to curriculum, the learning objectives of the curriculum, the learning outcomes of the curriculum, and what is it that you're looking to do. And hence we talked about the difference between formative and summative assessment, and how every assessment can actually turn into formative assessment if we give feedback and if we give diagnostic comments to our children, from where they can actually look at their next steps for learning. And that's why I showed them the slide where feedback becomes extremely important, and how there are 3 people who actually help a learner to learn. The teacher, of course, the learner's friends, the peer group in the classroom, and the learner himself or herself has a very important role to play in their learning through the assessment structure. Then, of course, we talked about some of the advantages of formative assessment, that they should be non-threatening, and they are allowing students to take ownership. I think that's a very big piece. And teachers, it informs the teaching learning on a day-to-day basis, on a minute-to-minute basis. The question you ask, the chart you put up, the maybe a scenario or a case study that you present, through those you will be able to determine whether children are learning or not. Because remember, the end goal is to see whether they are meeting those learning outcomes that have been put into the curriculum. And we shared a few examples of formative assessment and what you could do in class, which is non-threatening. So give them a learning menu. You could ask the children to make quizzes rather than us make always the quizzes, and you will see the quality is much better. You could also, turn things around. You don't always have to ask them definitions. You could give them scenarios and ask them for what word comes in. You could create a crossword. I made lots of crosswords for children just so that they understood the terminology of economics. You could, I find this a very powerful way of assessing the learning in the class, which is an exit ticket. 5 minutes before, ask them to write anything and everything that they have learned in the classroom that day. And if they have any questions for which are still pending, or they don't have clarity, they can ask that, and then it will give you feedback on what you need to start the next day's class about. And we shared some, Harvard's Project Zero's, some visible thinking routines that are now used in most schools. We also looked at case studies and how you can formulate questions around a case study, and how, you could give it to the children to formulate their own questions and answer them through this case study. We also moved into understanding Bloom's taxonomy when we are framing questions, whether they are long answers or whether they are MCQs. It's possible under both to do that. And I shared with you an example of national income accounting, how in that particular unit you can create all 6 levels of Bloom's. And then we also went into some examples of critical thinking questions, because that is the future. Children need to be able to think divergently, to be able to think holistically, need to think critically, to be able to pull out, information from other subjects, to be able to actually, answer questions. It cannot just be in silos anymore. So critical thinking questions become very, very important. We also then went into looking at the Keynesian economics and said, okay, if we had to do the similar structure in Keynes, I can show you what the team actually brought in. And see, they said we brought in questions at the remembering level, at the understanding level. We discussed what can be done at the applying, the analyzing, the evaluating, and the creating level. So we did that. And then we moved into how do you frame MCQs? What are the strategies that you need to, and what are the tips you need to keep in mind when we write MCQs? Because it's not easy to write a high quality MCQ. I mean, we need to look at, there are specialized actually institutions that frame MCQs, whether it's like I was talking about SAT or GRE, or even people like the asset examination. So they have people who are actually determining how to write these MCQs. It's a skill that we need to develop in all ourselves, because this is the way forward when we want to move from content to competency based assessment. And then I shared certain examples of MCQs which could be there. And we spoke about Socrative. Thank you. And I'm going to stop presenting now.
Thank you so much, Diyaji, for this wonderful presentation. Not for the sake of typically, because these days the word wonderful used in many cases as a routine exercise. And you made this, I'm sure that my participants, my teacher colleagues must have felt that they participated in the program. They also, many of them also gave good amount of questions. If there are any doubts, or if there are any issues, or if any, the floor is open now. So we'll go for some question answer sessions or any suggestions with regard to this presentation. Any comments, any suggestion?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. The session was very enriching, sir, and it will be very helpful to teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Ranaji. Any other comments? Any other suggestions?
My request would be that when you plan your curriculum or your delivery of curriculum in the coming year, I would strongly request you to please put the assessments in place. What is it that you would be looking at? What formative assessment? What 21st century skills are you developing? I'm sorry, I'm like a broken record on that, because we need to move away from just rote learning. So what skills are we developing? What critical thinking, the thinking skills of our children are we developing in those tasks that you are designing? Ask the children to design. I find that that's a very good way of actually, they will design things that they want to do and how they want to demonstrate their learning. So it has to be done. teaching, learning, and assessment now has to go into it's all in all in one classroom. You cannot think of teaching, learning, and then do assessment later. You have to dovetail it together, and formative assessment is the key to better summative results.
Thank you, Ambika. Yeah, we'll certainly work together and see how maybe if the future curricular revisions takes place. Certainly, we'll all pull together and express our views.
Yeah, Srinivasan, I'd just like to add, although there is some noise in my house, some construction work is going on, but I like to say that
Please
we
go
should
ahead.
also think about rural child, how rural child will cope up with different types of assessment. Here we can suggest something like 1 minute test, where we can ask them, give them the topic, and give them 1 minute to express themselves on that topic, and then from their understanding we can pull up the chapter. Then I think this is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaya. It's very important that see, there is also some sense of the what is possible. Particularly, majority of the schools in India are located in the rural parts. So we also have to see what is a viable way of assessing children, given the.
I really,
Hello.
Srinivasan,
Yeah.
I
Hello.
want everybody, I would request everybody to actually look at the video of a gentleman called Mr. Ranjit Singh Desale. Mr. Desale is the award winner of the 2020 Global Teacher Prize. He gave away half his prize money. The total prize money he got was $1 million. He gave half that prize money away to his other 9 finalists. That's not the reason I'm talking. He is a teacher who teaches grades 3 and 4 primary girls, children in a village in Maharashtra, and how he has transformed education in that school. It's a 10-minute video. I'm sure you'll find it on the net. Please, I request all of us. He visited my school virtually. It was inspirational. He has done things that most of our schools, we call ourselves, and I told my team, we call ourselves technologically savvy. Mr. Desale is miles ahead of us. It's really an eye-opener to see what the gentleman has done. He's also won some innovation awards in India. Really something to learn from.
Yeah, sure, we'll do it. Pooja, you want to ask, somebody wanted to
Acha.
ask.
Srinivasan, I just like to add, if through the assessment we can also talk about values, how do you inculcate values like sharing, caring. These things can also be added up. Like, let's say you got 1 liter of milk for yourself. Would you like to share it with your neighbors? Then this can lead to different kinds of question and thinking from the child. So through this method we can also inculcate values among the children. Then we can also sensitize learners about the gender. We can have some question, at least in 20 among the 20 questions we can have some question for gender, which can talk about the gender also. And we have to take transgender also into consideration when we are framing questions. Thank you.
Necessary that when we look for renewing curriculum or revising the economics curriculum, we have to give scope in the content also, so that teachers will be able to connect those content in the area of gender, inclusion, and all those areas which we want to promote as values actually. And certainly it's a very good suggestion, Jayaji. Yeah. Any other comment?
Yes, sir. One more thing I would like to say, sir, that's when we talk about assessment, generally we think of pen paper test only. But here when we are talking about assessment, not only pen paper, that is oral and everything. Okay. As JMM has also told about value, inclusion and other things, we should include all that real life situations and their application in real life situations. Okay. Without pen paper also. So that is my suggestion.
Yeah. Thank you, Ranaji. Yeah. Any other comments or suggestion or teachers? You can also suggest that if we want to have a webinar for the next coming month, What is your suggestion? Apart from these two sessions that we had, do you have any suggestions on this area? You can also email us. That's one way to get connected.
Hello, Srinivasan sir.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to know that I missed last video. This thing, can I get the
Yeah. See, all those
recording of the earlier webinars?
Yes. So what we can do, like 4 webinars, they are available in the YouTube. Look, I can share the links to your email ID. Please share your. You can just mail to.
Yeah.
I'm just giving an email ID here.
I've just given my mail ID on Google Forms, that the link you shared just now for the next webinar.
Okay, certainly. Next thing is that all those who are listening to participating in this webinar, the recording will be automatically sent to you. You can just download it. So it's Google's policy that if you are participating in the webinar, you will get the link. So once this recording is done, once they arrange it, they will share with you. So you yourself can download it. In case you are not able to access download the webinar this session, we can certainly share. Just send a mail. We can share this this session actually, and also the earlier sessions. We can send the
Thank
links.
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other suggestions on how to go about for the next webinar? See, next webinar, maybe like see the CBSE board examinations in May, June. So we have to see like your possibility of sparing time. And I also wanted to know now, see, when we talk about 3 to 5, 3:30, 3:45 only, most of you are able to come and participate. We also, I can suggest, because it's a participation, your participation is more important than our fixation of time. So you can also suggest on timings, can you move to 3:30 to 5, 5:30, something like that? Or Friday to like Saturday is okay, or Friday we can keep it. That's one suggestion. So suggestions, Sundays, Kapil, then this Sunday would be best. Let me see. My children should not scold me if it is Sunday. That's the one. Anyway, we'll just keep note of it, and it's a collective use. Let us see. Let us listen to other teachers also, which they would be appropriate, and which time would be more appropriate. It depends on your views. Okay. Yeah. Is there any other suggestion or any? Yeah. Please go ahead. Those who have raised your hands, you can just, since the session is over now, you can just unmute and speak. Any other comments? Any other suggestions?
I think Mr. Rana is saying Saturday late evening.
Yeah.
Everybody is talking about Saturday. Sunday is not a fair day to have anything.
Okay. Saturday late evening. Okay, that could be, maybe instead of 3, we can little postpone little half an hour or 1 hour. Okay, we'll keep this in our mind when we go for next webinar session. Yeah. So if there are no issues, no discussion now, no suggestions, so can we close this session now?
Thank you, Ambika, for your wonderful talk. Thank you, Srinivasan, for coordinating such a wonderful meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, Jaya.
Thank you. Thanks to all the teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh.
Yeah.
So with this, we are coming to the end of this webinar, and we thank, besides her illness, Ambika, thank you very much for coming forward to take this session. We will trouble you, don't worry. So you should quickly recover and get more and more stamina, so that we will trouble you and get more immunity. Thank you.
With pleasure. With pleasure.
So
thanks a lot, Srinivasan sir, and thanks a lot, Ambika ma'am.
So with this,
really
we are
enriching session.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, ma'am. It's a wonderful session. And in the next session, sir, I just want to relate the NEP with the economics. Actually, now it's going on NEP. And how can we modify our economics classroom in context of the new education policy 2020? So, sir, it would be a very great help for us, so that if you will arrange something, a kind of suggestion or help, that how can we transform our classroom for the, जैसे अंबिका मैम ने भी बोला, that we need to develop the 21st skill century, so that is why.
Sure, we will take it up. Actually, we will take up as one session.
And Pooja, not only 21st century, I said also personal development of every child.
Yes,
I'll give
yes.
you a small example. I'll give you a small example. जब हम लोग बच्चों को एक असाइनमेंट देते हैं करने के लिए और उनको कहते हैं कि समय पर उसको सबमिट करो. Look at the skills we are teaching them. We teach them to take responsibility of their learning because they have to complete the assignment. We teach them the skill of being punctual and the value of being punctual because we say you have to develop it. You also look at their presentation skills. You are teaching them communication skills. So actually, as a teacher, we are doing so many things and so many aspects of their overall development we touch upon. But we only focus on our concept clarity and they should know concepts. I would request economics teachers to think of the impact they make on the holistic development of every child who is under their care. And
Yes,
which is
ma'am.
what the NEP is looking for us to do. That is where the NEP, the direction of the NEP is also.
Yes.
Exactly, ma'am. Holistic report card is there.
Thank you very much. So, Ambigaji, and take rest. We'll meet the next webinar. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you.